All right, it's time for another video. So phase one was to cut and prep your decks. Phase two is going to be to cut and prep and attach all your frames. So we're going to start out with a bunch of 1x3s. I prefer 1x3s because they weigh less, obviously, than 2x4s. They tend to be a lot straighter, cleaner. All of your rigidity in the boards is going to come from those 3/4 inch birch tops. So these 1x3s are great for making the frames. I've seen some folks using 1x4s. No problem with that at all. They're just a little bit taller. So let's go ahead and get started by taking all your 1x3s, clean those up if you need to by sanding the surfaces, and then you're going to mark those cuts. So we're going to cut all of our sides to 47 1/4 inches. And then we're going to mark all of our cross pieces, and you'll have 4 of these for each board at 22 inches. One of those will be used for the leg brace. When we get to that step, we'll trim that one down from 22 inches just a little bit. And remember, these frames are going to be recessed just a bit. That gives you a nice lip around the top, and it looks great, a little more tournament style than the traditional flush sides. There's a few other benefits to having recessed frames too. So after you have those 1x3s all cut down into 47 1/4, 2 of those per board and 22 inches, 4 of those per board, then you need to mark where your pocket holes will be screwed. So we'll use 6 across the sides and 3 across the cross pieces. We'll also be screwing 2 pocket holes into the ends of each of the cross pieces. So I like to space my pocket holes pretty equally down the length of the sides, and then also with the cross pieces, 1 pocket hole dead center, and then the other 2 spaced equally. Okay. If you haven't used a Kreg jig before, this comes in really handy. This is the Kreg K-4 jig. Has a clamp built in, just makes things a lot faster than trying to use one of the little mini Kreg jigs. All right, the next step is going to take all of your cut and pocket hole drilled pieces and then attach those and assemble your frames. So I like to use this jig that I made up. It's the size of a cornhole board, 2 feet by 4 feet, piece of cheap MDF, 3/4 inches. And I have these blocks screwed into it, a couple little angle braces, just to help me place those boards so every frame is exactly the same. That's really important if you want your boards to attach. That'll be one of the final steps, is to put these blocks in there so that your boards can squeeze together using friction. There's no latches or anything necessary, but it's important that all your frames are exactly square and exactly the same so that that method works. If your frames aren't square, they're not going to sit straight either. So I get all those pieces all clamped up. I use a 2-foot heavy-duty clamp to squeeze them in and hold it tight. Now, when you're pre-drilling, use a slightly smaller than the shank of your screw. I'm a little cheap, so 1 1/4 inch drywall screws work just fine for me. Always pre-drill. You don't ever want to drill a screw into raw wood. It basically just spreads out the wood and it's going to tear out. It's not going to work out well. So pre-drill with a small bit and come back with your Phillips and attach set that aside. Okay, now it's time to attach those frames to your decks. So pick out your deck, lay it down face down with the better looking side facing down, and then place your frame. Use your clamps all the way around. Make sure that it's positioned exactly where you want it. Now you're going to pre-drill again into the plywood. Be very careful not to go all the way through the plywood because you don't want an ugly scar on the face of the playing surface there. So go ahead and pre-drill all those holes and then come back around with the 1 1/4 inch screws and attach that firmly. I add these small blocks to the top corners of the frame. What that does is it beefs up those top corners. That's where the leg is going to press against the frame. So the beefier that joint, the better. So I make these small blocks just out of scrap 1x3s, whatever's left over from when I cut my frame boards. And I just cut those down to the same width as the leg that I'm using. I use 2x3s for my leg. So I make these blocks, I think it's about 2.5 inches wide. It's the same width as a 2x3. So you'll place those little blocks right inside of that top corner with wood glue, clamp those up nice and tight, and then let those sit and dry for a while. After those blocks have completely dried, it's time to sand. You want to clean up that surface. You probably have some pencil marks from where you were going to drill your pocket holes. And you want to sand just to make sure that everything is nice and flush across the top. Now you can see also we're taking our router with our 1/4 inch roundover bit and we're running it all the way around the outside of the frame and the inside edges of the frame. Gives you a nice rounded edge to hold on to. Also, when these boards get dragged along the ground, they're much less likely to splinter. So you always want to round over the inside and outside edges of your frames. There's a few close-ups. All right, that does it for your frames. We've cut our pieces, we've attached them all, we've sanded them flush, we added our blocks, we routed the inside and outside edge of our frames. Next up is going to be legs. That's the step that so many of us dread, but there's an easy way to do it. So I'll show you that in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Head on over to Instagram and follow me at Mossboards. Talk to you later.